At this time, I'd like to dismiss the children. Those who are handling the classes, would you please go ahead and take them downstairs at this time? Thank you.
All right, what's my place? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, we are all blessed with different talents and skill sets. I like to think that I'm pretty good at, some would call it being nosy, but I like to think of it as a form of ministry because you never know what someone may be in need of or too afraid to ask for unless you insert yourself in their business a little bit. And not in a Jezebel kind of way, in a loving friendship kind of way. So, in my, getting to know all of you, I've noticed that, we're a very diverse group, some very cool backgrounds. And what I like to do in particular is I like to go to our star couples, and I like to find out how you met, your love story, your background story, and your journey of faith together. And I have to say, in our congregation, we have some pretty good love stories. For instance, does anyone know that Ron and Ruthie over there, they met in Bermuda. And they lived there for quite some time before they came here. The Lindstroms, they met working at a hospital, and he won her over with his car. I know the Carltons were high school sweethearts. She was a cheerleader, and he was just Michael. Right. Oh, what was he? Oh, okay. So I just learned George and Lisa's just last week. She was working at McDonald's, and he was working, close by, and he would come in there and eat all the time, and that's how they met, through the Golden Arches. And of course, everyone knows Rabbi and Rochelle and their love from Wayside Furniture. And the Carpenters, which Stephanie's not here, but they sort of inspired my Torah portion today because they have a really good love story because they met right here at the Star in the East. And she wasn't too sure about him at first. and I'm going by her story, not his. It would be interesting to find out all the guy stories because I get my information from the ladies. It would be like that song from Grease, like the Summer Lovin' song. Anyhow, she wasn't that into him, and but she prayed about it, and I know he prayed about it, and their answer to God, of course, was each other. And that brings me to our biblical, Torah couple, Yitzhak and Rivka. And Yitzhak, unlike a lot of his biblical counterparts, he lacks the drama. He's a pretty simple guy. He doesn't have a whole bunch of wives, no concubines, no mistresses, no, many children from many women, no oops babies, no love triangles. He's a pretty straightforward kind of guy, and he has one wife, and that would be Rivka, and that is God's design. He meant for us to have one wife, one husband, to become one flesh in Messiah Yeshua. And how do we know that that's God's design? Because he refers to us as believers, as the body of Messiah, as being the bride. And he, of course, one God through Messiah Yeshua is referenced as the bridegroom. One bride, one bridegroom together, echad, right? Amen. So, God repeatedly tells us that he is a jealous God. He is angered by the sin of adultery. He is faithful to us, and he expects us to be faithful to him. And by his love for us, we know the definition of love. We know what love is. If you look at Rabbi Shaul's, everybody knows his love description of love. Love is patient, love is kind, right? He was not married. That was the love that he got from God the Father, and that we should be giving each other and we should be getting in return. So when you are looking for a significant other, all you have to do is look at that particular verse, and it's like a checklist. Love is patient. Check. Is this guy patient? Oh, okay, love is kind. Is he kind? You just go da-da-da right down the list. If it's not there, then that's not the person for you, because that is God's definition of love. Now, Yitzhak and Rivka, they're very solid. It seems like they have that biblical love. And she, that right there, that is everything to do with someone putting a prayer request in for Yitzhak, because God formed that marriage himself. That was what God intended. And she fulfills his every need as a wife because God knows his every need. Of course, he knows who our dream boat is. He created them. He created all of us. So it's funny that, we tend to go after our own desires, because he knows what we need, and we could just go straight to him and cut through all the red tape. So who makes this prayer request for Yitzhak? As we see from the Torah portion, it's not Yitzhak, and it's not Abraham. It's Abraham's servants that he entrusts to find that wife for his son. But Abraham did trust, because if you read in the Torah portion, chapter 24, verse 40, it says, Adonai, in whose presence I live, will send his angel with you to make your trip successful. That's what Abraham says. So he has that trust, which is funny because, just a few weeks ago, you learned of his lack of trust. That was something he always struggled with. He had trust issues. So in the end there, you see where he has grown in his faith. He has learned to trust.
Amen.
So, the servant, though, the servant is the one who puts the prayer request in. He asks who God intends, his will. And he also has that trust. He trusts that God's going to reveal the right one for him. And he also asks for a clear, distinct sign. And that is, I think, something that we could all use when we are praying. Because God sometimes, he answers our prayers very subtly in small miracles every day. And if you're not focused on him, then you tend to miss it. So it's sometimes when we're praying, it's okay to ask God to shout his answers back at us, so that our voices are not louder than his. And of course, God accommodates the servant. He gives him a very clear, distinct sign, with the camels. And he finds Rivka, she's revealed to him, and off they go in the camel caravan. So the question is, what would happen if Abraham and the servant, they weren't nosy? They didn't want to be in Yitzhak's, personal business. They didn't care who he married. Because that's, in the world we live in today, that's a common mindset. I see that all the time. I see people marrying questionable people, and, that's the response from the parents. Well, that's none of my business. I don't have to marry, them. That they have to make their own mistakes. And sometimes as parents, you have to care. You have to want, your children to have like-minded believers, because that's your family. You want them to be saved. Right. You want that protection over them. So it's okay to be in their business. You should be in their business. If they didn't care, and they didn't ask God to intercede with his will, I guarantee you that Yitzhak's Torah portion would be just as sin-filled and drama-filled as his biblical counterparts. He would have had the same sin, that lifestyle, that multiple wives, because that welcomes sin. That's a doorway, you know, because you see that, you know, it's like slippery slope. You know, one sin leads to another, and you know, first it starts with lust, and then it starts with murder. You know, call of course David. Okay. Anyhow, I get sidetracked. The good news for us, because you know that is what we do as people. You know, when we are left to make decisions on our own terms, you know, we make poor decisions based on selfish reasons. You know, what we think that we need, and not what we actually do need. But the good news is that it is never too late to get on your knees and ask God and you know, apologize and say, I'm so sorry, God, I made a horrible decision. I did not ask you what you wanted. Please, God, help me turn it around. Take me back to the path that you want me to go on. And, you know, he's a good God. He will do that for you. But you have to want it. You have to ask him. And, you know, he can do that. He can make our wrong decisions right. You know, he is a God that can turn water into wine. But you have to ask. And I picked this Torah portion because I think in a marriage that is the perfect marriage. That is what we strive for. And I picked it in a large part because it is an excellent example of living a purity lifestyle. And as our teens know, that is something I'm very passionate about. And it's something that I can't not stand up here with a microphone and not preach that. I would preach it off the mountaintops if I could, because that is something that our teenagers, you know, are being hit with left and right.
That's right.
So if you look, you know, at our Torah portion, if you look at Genesis 24, verse 62, it says, meanwhile, Yitzhak, one evening after coming along the road from Be'er Lachai Ro'ai, he was living in the Negev, went out walking in the field, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching. Rivka too looked up, and when she saw Yitzhak, she quickly dismounted the camel. She said to the servant, who is this man walking in the field to meet us? When the servant replied, it's my master, she took off her veil and covered herself. And that right there is a sign of modesty and respect for your husband. No one should be unveiling you but your husband.
That's right.
And then it continues on. It says, the servant told Yitzhak everything he had done. Then Yitzhak brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rivka, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Now that just one line right there, that ties, you know, the physical intimacy, you know, into a marriage covenant. That puts that physical, you know, physical relationship that belongs with marriage, and then again it ties it to love, because that is something that is supposed to be done in a marital relationship out of love. It's not out of lust, it's not out of obligation, it's not out of pressure. That is supposed to be a love relationship with your husband only. Get all high under the collar. No, I lost where I'm at. So, the world we live in, it is under the false understanding that dating equals sleeping together. And I remember, it's been a while since I've been out of the dating game, but I remember it was a common mindset that on the third date, that was the socially accepted amount of time to go ahead and that's a green light to sleep with each other, which is ridiculous. Just ridiculous. But that is an example of, you know, the evils in this world. And they make it so accommodating to let that sexual sin slip in. You know, starting with our young teenagers in health class, you know, they're passing out condoms. You know, it's like, oh, okay, well, you don't want condoms, you know, that's fine. You know, there's a vast, you know, array of birth control. Any kind of pill you want. You don't want a pill, here's a patch. You don't want a patch, here's a surgical insert. Have a surgery. Oh, that didn't work for you, here's a plan B pill. Oh, you got pregnant and that didn't work? I'll have an abortion. Oh, it's late. that's fine, you know, up to 40 weeks, that's fine. You know, any angle they can get, they make it so accommodating. It's sick. So, it's all around us. It's in popular music. It's on TV shows. I know, speaking from my era of the 90s, the popular TV shows were Friends and Seinfeld, Sex and the City, and that's all it was. It was just a bunch of people sleeping together, you know, and the comedy of it, and, you know, their lives and the quirks. And you know, that's what the enemy wants. He wants it to seem like that's okay, like it's just a part of everyday, you know, life. That's like shaking hands anymore. And it may be okay in this world, it's not okay in the next.
That's right.
That is a special relationship, and it may not matter, you know, here, but it mattered there. So, and it you know, it takes a lot of prayer, and it takes a lot of courage to keep yourself pure. In this society, if you're living a purity lifestyle, you are looked at like you are some type of prude, you are odd, that you are doing something wrong because, you know, you're saying no. And Yitzhak, if you look in the Bible, he was not married to Rivka until he was 40 years old. 40, like, that is unheard of nowadays. I can't name a single person that I can say that about. It's incredibly rare, but that meant that he was a virgin up to 40. And once again, it doesn't matter now, but in biblical times, if you were a young lady and you were getting betrothed to somebody and they found out that you were not a virgin, that was grounds to get stoned to death. I mean, look at Joseph and Miriam. Like, he was ready to divorce her. That was grounds for a divorce, and that was a merciful approach, was divorce. So, but it is something that you have to trust God for. It takes an incredible amount of trust and faith, because it's not in your time. You know, that's something that that's a person that God reveals to in His time. So it takes a lot of faith to be under that scrutiny from this world, you know, until God reveals that person to you. And it seems like we're so desperate to find that person in our time. It has to be quick. That's why you see all these dating sites, you know, Match.com. They have a Match.com for like every person out there, every lifestyle, every, you know, ethnic group. You know, it's a sign of you know, of desperation. And we are not to be a desperate people. We are children of God. We have meaning. You know, we deserve more than that. We deserve the person that God created for us, not to settle for just some guy that, you know, is the first guy that, you know, looks at you. So it's something that is that we obsess over, and it's something that should not be obsessed over. You go about your day-to-day doing the Lord's business. Keep your eyes focused on Him, and let Him reveal that person to you in His time. And you will be very glad that you did. You know, you want you want to save yourself for that person, just as you would want that person to save themselves for you. You know, who wants to know that, you know, being married, that their husband slept with X amount of women, or that their wife slept with X amount of men before you're married? That's a special relationship. You don't want to waste that on just anybody. You want that relationship for the person that God picked out for you. So today, I ask that you join me in prayer, the same prayer that Yitzhak, with the servant, prayed for Yitzhak, that Yitzhak received. I ask that you join with me in prayer today and in your regular daily prayers for our young people, for our children, so that they too can have what Yitzhak had, that they can have that perfect love that God wants for us. And so that their faith, they don't lose who they are, their innocence. So, if you'll just bow your heads, then I'll finish up. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless our young people, our teenagers. We ask that you give them courage and strength to stand up and to stay pure, to stay holy as you are pure and holy. We ask that you reveal to them in your time the person that you created for them, the husbands and wives that you made specifically for them. And we ask that you bless them with patience, that they can wait for that person, and that they just go about doing your will, your purpose, until you reveal that person in your time. And please, God, give them a clear sign of the path that you want them to take, a clear sign that that is the right person for them, so that there is no doubt that they will not make some of the same mistakes that we have made. Please, God, reveal that to them and protect our kids from all of the sin, that is around them, that is pushed on them on a day-to-day basis. We ask all this in your Son, Yeshua's name. Amen.
For first Drash.